Hi, this is Phil Bolsta with the Shift Network. Beatrice Chestnut is about to demonstrate the power of the Enneagram in action with Carrie Lukey, who's meeting Beatrice for the first time. Beatrice will help Carrie identify her Enneagram type and then coach her accordingly. While Beatrice's course does not include one-on-one sessions, this video will demonstrate how the Enneagram, a powerful tool for personal and collective transformation, can help you live a more harmonious and fulfilling life, even in the midst of difficult times. With that, take it away, Beatrice.
Thank you, Phil. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Beatrice.
I'm really grateful to you for helping us demonstrate the Enneagram today.
My pleasure.
So I'll be doing what we call a typing interview where I'll help you find your type. And in a moment, I'll ask you to just tell me a little bit about how much you know about the Enneagram, you know, if you're familiar with it, if it's brand new. But first of all, I want to say I'm going to ask a range of questions and just answer with whatever comes to you at first. Don't feel like you need to overthink it or anything.
Sure.
And if I ask anything that you'd prefer not to answer, just let me know and I'll move on.
Will do.
Okay. So what's your, familiarity with the Enneagram or not?
I am brand new to it. I'll be honest. I'm not familiar with it, so I will be learning.
Great, great. Okay, so this is an interview that I've learned to do over time because the Enneagram can be a really powerful tool for growth, but really the first step is locating your type, finding one of the 9 types that really feels right to you, like a good fit, because once you find your type, then you can really access a lot of insights about yourself that can guide your growth process.
Wonderful. Very good.
And so once we get to your type, or, as close as we can, sometimes I can narrow it down to 1 or 2. Then I'll give you some tips about how to use your type to grow.
That sounds wonderful.
Does that make sense? Okay, good.
It does.
Good. Okay, so I'm just going to ask it's going to just feel like a range of random questions.
Sure.
A lot of people find that they're thought-provoking and that the process of the interview itself is a good experience. But yeah, just let me know whatever feels most true to you.
Sounds good.
Okay. So first question, how important are goals to you? Do you think in terms of having goals or meeting goals?
At my age, not so much anymore. I mean, certainly in the past, I think I had goals and most of those I achieved. Now I'm kind of at a stage where I take one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I do things.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good, actually. What about being recognized for the things that you do well? Is that important to you, and how important is it?
It's a good question. A lot, of things I do, whether it be through volunteerism, that sort of thing, I do without expectation of any recognition. But yet other things in my life, if I do something, it's kind of a feel good, recognized, be that good or bad, but to be recognized and have people maybe show some gratitude if it's a task that I've done and to help them or what have you. But yeah, I think being recognized to a certain degree makes a person and makes me feel good.
Great, that makes sense. How aware are you of having an image, or let's say like presenting yourself in a certain way to the people in the world that you might meet?
Now that one, I do strive for a certain image, I guess. I like to take care of myself. So that's part of the image I have is a healthy lifestyle, whether it be exercising, eating, speaking, talking, sharing my knowledge, and some of my life's experiences. And I just think that helps me grow as a person. So to say the image, I would say is important. I mean, for me, whether it be the way I look, I don't like going out without having run a comb through my hair or have a dab of makeup on, just so it brightens my outward appearance. My inward appearance is important, and if I have said something that may hurt someone, that bothers me. I think the inward image is important to me as well.
Okay. And what about gaining the approval of others? How important is that to you?
Depends on the individual. Certain individuals, yes, obviously I want their approval. I hold them near and dear to my heart, and I don't want to do anything that might hurt them or make them feel ill of me. I mean, if that sort of answers the question.
Yeah, that makes sense. In your life, have you ever considered yourself a workaholic, like have worked to the point where it was hard to stop?
No, not to certain projects. Yes. I mean, I want to work till I get things done. Whether it be athletic training, I want to work till I get a certain milestone done to achieve that. But generally speaking, no. I mean, I little snippets in my life, but I don't consider myself really a workaholic. I like to have some downtime and me time.
Okay. What's been your experience of authority? And most of these questions I'm asking for kind of what's been the trend over your whole life, not like what goes on now or what goes on has happened in the past, but sort of the overall picture. So what's your relationship been like to authority in your life?
You know, I guess overall authority, I try to show respect, whether that be authority of parents growing up, whether that be a job that I had and a boss. I've been a stay-at-home mom now for years. I kind of my own boss. But if I respect those who are of authority, I feel more in tune with them, and certainly show and feel a great deal of respect for that leadership or authority.
Okay. And what role has fear played in your life, if any?
Oh, fear. I think it's one of those natural things anybody has. What role has fear? I don't like to have fear control me, although at times it does. Various fears in my life that I really feel I need to work through and try to figure out a way to work through that, to just move ahead and leave it behind me.
What kinds of things would inspire fear in you?
Health concerns. At one time, fear of flying. You know, I mean, it kind of a strange one, but it's a very common one. I would say, you know, certainly recent fears of the world crisis, not knowing, not having control of what's happening next.
Yeah.
And I like to have better control. And I have less fear when I feel I can manage things a little bit better by myself.
Okay. Have you tended to be self-sufficient in your life?
To some degree. But I guess I have relied on relationships, whether it be my husband and friends. I have that need. I don't know that I'd be one that could go off and be totally independent, sufficient. I need people, and whether it be just a physical presence to be able to converse, talk, a hug, you know, anything, a listening ear, or for me to be able to voice my concerns.
Right. Right. How easy or hard has it been for you to trust people historically?
That's a really good question, because I've been in situations where people very close to me turns out have not been trustworthy, and that can be painful.
Mhm.
So it does create some angst to regain that trust.
Mm-hmm.
I feel it has been lost. I'm not always really good at opening up for that level of trust to come right back into my life.
Mhm.
So I'm careful with that one. I like to just feel trust in most people that I meet,
Mhm.
that, people are genuinely good, and I surround myself with most people like that. But, sometimes trust is a factor, and it just takes me some time to regain some of that trust. And I'm hoping that with my friends and family, that I'm one that they feel they can trust. And for the most part, I think everybody knows that.
Is your first impulse to trust or not?
Depending upon the person, I guess, yeah. I do want to, but if things have gone awry with a certain individual, and they will say something, I'm going, okay, there's that little bit of hesitation. I prefer just feeling more trust towards people in general. It makes life easier, when you just feel more comfortable. And so I would say, generally speaking, I will feel more trust initially, unless they give me reason to believe otherwise.
And do you have the sense that you're good at reading people?
Yeah, I'm fairly good at first impressions.
Mhm.
I think I am, to be honest with you. I've met very diverse people and have kind of called it, whether it be talking about something with my husband or a friend, and I sense this in this individual, and it has or has not happened. So yeah, I would say that I'm I would say a good judge of character.
Mm-hmm. What about forecasting potential problems before they occur? Is that something that you tend to do?
At times, a lot of these questions are going to be depending upon individuals.
Great, yeah,
Right.
information is good, yeah.
Right, and certain people that come to mind, I can kind of forecast what I feel may happen. Unfortunately, at times it has happened just that way. Other times, I just, again, try to ride it like the wave and see what happens. Typically, forecasting, it's more been for me with various people forecasting something that may not be the best outcome. So I don't like to forecast too much. I just prefer to look forward to and hope for the best.
So that said, do you ever think in terms of worst case scenarios?
Sure. I mean, I've used that. In worst case scenario, this might happen. But to live on that one all the time, no. Again, in certain situations, I can figure, okay, in the worst case scenario, it might happen this way, or this may occur. But I would say that would be kind of a negative outlook, and I would say I'm probably more of a positive person. So again, depending upon the people and the situation.
So would you say you're more of an optimist than a pessimist?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it may not sound like that by what I've said, but yeah.
I hear it. Yeah. So when you're talking about an issue with people, are you pretty good at seeing many different sides of an issue, or do you usually kind of pretty quickly sort of take one point of view really strongly?
And I would say, that's a little give and take here. I have a certain viewpoint, and I mean, that's a very good question, because I would say that could be a fault of mine, where I do hold on to certain views, and as I can say to someone, well, we're just going to have to agree to disagree and leave it at that. And that's what I will do if I realize I can't bring my thoughts to their understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they're thinking the same thing about me.
Right.
You know, in today's political world, I mean, it's a perfect example. I mean, it's just like I have certain views that are very strong, and I can listen to other people's, and I'm not going to change my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Things I go, you know, yeah, I can see the way you're taking this. I can see your point of view, and try to understand that. But whether I'm drawn to that side or this way or that way, it will depend on the situation. But again, I would usually just say, oh, you know, I think maybe we need to, you know, just agree to disagree on this one.
I see. So it sounds like you're pretty, you tend to have opinions on things.
Sure.
But that doesn't stop you from seeing someone else's point of view.
No.
But you tend to kind of come to a decision on what your view is pretty solidly.
Yeah, and I need to relax on that time at times so that I can really fully see the other side of what someone might be trying to say.
Right. Okay. How important is harmony to you? Like everybody getting along?
In a perfect world, that would be ideal.
Yeah.
You know, and harmony is nice. It's certainly, for me, in a family unit, it's great. Harmony would be wonderful. Friendships, harmony is wonderful. So I think it's great, but I don't necessarily anticipate life going that way and being harmonious, because it has never proven to be that. There are always obstacles and hiccups along the way. And I guess that's allowed me to enjoy the highs even more when I do have some challenges that I have to address and face and overcome.
Okay. And what about conflict? What's your experience of conflict been like?
Oh boy. Conflict it can be, I would say, pretty difficult at times to deal with. When it's a conflict with someone that I love or care for, it is stressful. It can throw me for a loop. It can keep me awake at night. And for frustrations or lack of understanding and what have you. So conflict can kind of take a toll on me at times, and I just have to be able to work my way through that. And as time passes, it will, that stress or the anxiety or the angst will taper off.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like you don't avoid conflict. It sounds like you'll engage with it if you need
Yeah.
to. It's not pleasant necessarily. It's stressful, but it's not necessarily something that you avoid at all costs.
No,
Mm-hmm.
no.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Do you, how hard has it been for you to say no in your life? Or easy?
You know, I'm pretty comfortable with saying no. If it's something I feel strongly about, and I know there's going to be some backfire, I just have to, again, then there's conflict.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Conflict.
Yeah.
If I feel strongly enough about something, I will say no. And I have. You could ask my kids.
Okay.
Oh, she's good at saying no.
Yeah. And so
if I,
you do as a
yeah,
parent, so that's not
yeah.
a bad thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Good. What's your experience of anger been like in your life?
At times difficult to control, whether it be my own anger or the anger of someone else.
Both.
Yeah.
Let's start with yours and then
Okay.
maybe somebody else's. Also.
Sometimes I try to count, just tense up and count before I speak or react. And at times apologize if that anger has brought out a part of me that I'm not real happy with. So trying to control, that's a hard thing. It's a really hard thing to control is anger. And it's a hard thing to deal with when it's somebody else's anger.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's kind of reflecting again, trying to listen to the person who might be angry at me or angry at the situation. If they're angry at me, then I've obviously got to address it. If they're angry at someone else or something else, to maybe try to help
Mm-hmm.
and calm and ease the situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And how self-critical would you say that you are?
You know, I would say, you know, I don't know that I probably was more self-critical in my younger years than I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And now, as far as being self-critical,
Mm-hmm.
I try to again reflect on myself and what I'm saying, what I'm doing. And I might be more critical after the fact when I've realized and have time to think about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, I've got to be big enough to admit my mistakes. And if I'm critical of myself, I've got to figure out a way why, number one, and then how to resolve that.
Mm-hmm.
And try to work through that the best I can.
Mm-hmm. Some people have like what they might call an inner critic. Would you say that you have something like that?
I guess I call it a conscience, but you know, I certainly have a conscience, very much so. An inner critic, you know, part of it is it's at times very fast to react. So I don't know if it's an inner critic so much as it is my immediate response. And that's something that I probably could work at too, is just better take time, a moment, if just a moment, before I react or get critical of myself or others.
Okay. Okay. How critical are you of other people or judgmental?
To them, not very.
What about inside yourself?
Yes. Inside myself, you know, and it's probably the best way to be. Because it allows me to handle the issue without dumping it on them and getting the reverberations that might come back if I were to let that anger out and express it. There have certainly been times in my personal life that I've had to, and it's at times kind of treading lightly. But for the most part, I think it's always been with good reason. Not always with good result, but I feel justified at times, you know, most of the time anyway. And, you know, to go back at times that if I feel like I've spoke out of turn and said something, hopefully to be big enough just to say, okay, I apologize and I'd like to readdress this issue and that sort of thing. But
so you can admit if you make a mistake, for instance.
Yeah, I can. And it's something I probably should work at even harder. I try to not put myself in too many positions where I have to apologize.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's why I like to take moments to think and before I respond.
Yeah. Yep. You mentioned that you're mainly respectful of authority earlier. What's your experience of rules like? Do you sort of more follow the rules, break the rules?
Follow the rules. Yeah.
Okay.
I follow, you know, and rules are made for a reason. And sometimes rules can be broken for a good reason. But I would say, generally speaking, no, I'm one who is old-fashioned, and I follow the rules. They're put in place for a reason.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Would anyone who know you ever describe you as a perfectionist?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
You don't think of yourself that way either.
No, I like things certain ways, but a perfectionist, no. I like to have things nice. I like to make things nice for people. But if it's not perfect, I go, okay, this way it is. You come to my house and it's a mess. You came to see me, great. Come back again another day.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah.
Okay. And how important is it for you to be right or to do the right thing?
Well, to do the right thing is really important to me. To be right, it's a good feeling. But and that's when I need to be able to sit and listen to others and realize that, okay, maybe what you're saying, I need to listen to a little bit further and admit that, okay, I'm not always right. Now, I'm not always right, for sure. But to follow the rules, for sure, that is one thing that I do. And I feel I'm right in doing so. But certainly, I have made many mistakes in my life, and I know I'll make more.
And has that over time always been the same, or has it been something you've learned over time to kind of let go of the need to be right, or the desire to be right, maybe?
Yeah, I'd say as I've gotten older, I've certainly relaxed in that way, along with many others that we've already discussed, really.
Okay. Would you say that when you go into different situations with different people, would you say you're kind of always basically the same person, or do you kind of shift the way you present yourself depending on the context or the people you're with?
I would say I might shift if I don't know the people. Well, I think that after a while, when people get to know me, they're going, "Oh my gosh!" I can just let myself just go and be crazy and funny and ridiculous, and even, I suppose, be the life of the party. And I really don't drink, so it's just one of those things. It's my personality, and I'm just going, woo. And other times, if it's someone maybe new, I'm a little more reserved until I get to know that person. Or if I'm in a business setting, I will certainly be more professional. I can have both ways.
Sounds like you're tuned in to sort of what's appropriate for the setting. Would you say?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, great. How easy is it for you to tune into what people need?
I would say I'm pretty good at that. Again, the people that I know well, I feel I'm very well in tune to what they need, and I'm willing to help. It makes me feel good. Selfishly, to help others and help friends. It is. It's great, and certainly other people's, whether it be my volunteering doing Meals on Wheels. I see a need. With a certain person I'm dropping something off for, and it's just intrinsic. I just will act on that. And again, no credit, nothing. You just do the right thing. If you see somebody in need, step forward.
So it sounds like that these are great examples of what you said, how it's important to do the right thing. Yeah. Okay. And how tuned in would you say you are to what you need?
And I'm getting better at that as my kids have grown, because raising kids, it's really about their needs, and you set your own needs aside. And now I think I'm a little bit more in tune to my own needs, whether I act on those on a situation. But, I'm in tune to my needs to a certain degree, but without sacrificing the needs of others. Makes any sense.
What about before you had kids? Would you say you were tuned into your own needs, or not as much?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. was I tuned in? You know, I'm going back. I mean, my oldest is 37, so I'm going back a few years. And was I tuned in? You know, at that point in time in my life, yeah, I probably was. And whether it be, you know, those teenage years, I mean, my husband and I met and started dating when we were teenagers.
Mhm.
Well, I was in tune with my needs to be with him, and my needs for education, my needs, I again was active lifestyle and that sort of thing. So I was very in tune with my own needs and what I felt I needed to get on with my day.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Would you say that it's an important value to you to be responsible?
Oh gosh, yes.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. How connected are you to your emotions generally? How like do you consider yourself an emotional person or not as much?
Oh, I consider myself emotional. I mean, I'll cry at Hallmark commercials.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
Give me a good little house on the prairie and I'll be.
I hear you on that one. What's been your experience of sadness then in particular?
Oh, certainly the suffering of family and their passing. Uh, just having loved ones go too soon. And that's been a tough one, or broken relationships.
Mhm.
That has been very difficult and tough as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it sounds like, again, when there's an occasion when it's appropriate to feel these things, you have access to those, to like the feeling of sadness or
Oh
grief.
gosh, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about in everyday life? Would you say that you have kind of a lot of emotional ups and downs, or are you a little more on the steady side? Say if there isn't a big thing happening that might evoke a lot of sadness or grief.
Yeah, if there isn't something big, generally speaking, I'm pretty even keel and rather upbeat. But during sadder times, it does take me down, and it's difficult to work through. And again, the sleepless nights sort of thing. But on a even keel sort of time frame when there isn't that sadness looming over me, I can work through memories and okay, these momentary lapses, but generally speaking, no, I'm pretty upbeat and just happy-go-lucky.
Okay. Okay. And how central is it to you to help people?
I feel it's really important. That's why have volunteered for so many years. You know, and I have a special needs son and a daughter with other medical needs, and I just see the importance of support and helping. I think when you have people with special needs in your life, it opens doors. You know, some people would say it's going to close doors, and in some ways, I would say it's opened doors and allowed my feelings to flow a little bit more freely. When I will try to be there to help people, and again, with expecting nothing in return. And what it does, it's a feel good inside sort of thing, or just knowing you're doing what is right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would you say that you are aware and concerned of things like social justice causes and on that level of sort of doing the right thing? Do you think about sort of fairness and justice in the world, things like that?
Yeah, I do. And I don't always act on the big social justice subject matters just because in my own life I've got enough going on that I try to focus on that. I certainly have various feelings on them, and will definitely sit down and talk about social justice. But I'm not one to go down to the marches and do that. I've got friends, great friends, who do that, but they're not living the life I'm living every day.
Right.
So it's important to me, but I just don't always have time to partake in some of the protests, if you will, whether they be that or getting really involved with other groups. And so the big social justice problems are important to me, yet I don't always act on them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I'm aware of them. I'm very aware.
Yeah.
And sensitive, because a lot of those I can kind of relate to in a different sort of way.
Right. Okay. I've gotten a sense from some of what you've said that you're sensitive to your impact on people. Would you say that that's, how important is it for you to be liked by people?
I like to be liked. It's important. When I am not liked, it is, I try to figure out, okay, why? And some people, you can't be everybody's best friend.
Right.
I do like to be liked, and I do like to be respected.
How easy or hard is it for you to ask for help?
I've not always been real good about that. I would say with issues that I've gone through, good friends have stepped forward. And when they step forward, I will accept that. Do I go out asking? Not typically. And I don't know why. And I guess maybe because in my times of difficult times, I've had people step forward without having to be asked. And if that were not to occur, would I go and ask? I don't know that I would.
Okay. Do you tend to compare yourself to others?
Not all the, no, certain periods in my life, I may have compared whether it be my appearance or this or that, but generally, no, I don't compare myself too much to others.
Okay. Do you tend to know easily what's missing in a given situation? Is that something that you pay attention to?
I've never really thought of that. What's missing? Can you give me an example?
Like maybe you're working on a project and you realize what's not going well, or what some need that needs to be fulfilled.
Yeah. To get a job done, let's say I am working on a project or something, whether it be with one of my kids or around the house or whatever, finding that missing piece to the puzzle. Yeah. I mean, I definitely will be in tune with that and try to make the adjustments to complete whatever is being done.
Yep, that makes sense. Is it important for you to be authentic? Is that like an important value to you?
Yeah, authentic or real. That is important, because if you're not, then, and it's, I guess you could use the word phony or fake or whatever, and that's me. I would not be comfortable with that, and nor am I comfortable around people who are that way. If I feel that a certain person might be that way, it's probably someone that I will not get to know real well and bring into my life in a close sort of way.
Okay, that makes sense. How assertive are you?
Given the situation, I can be very assertive. And again, addressing things with my own kids, I have been very assertive. And whether that brings some conflict, I just know what I need, what needs to be done. So I am assertive in that, in getting it the way I feel it should be done. So I can be assertive when I feel the need.
Okay. When you're working with some people to get something done, would you rather be in charge, be the boss, or would you rather not?
Oh, do I like to listen to direction? Yeah, or give direction. I could be either way, really. If I feel that I'm the expert in the area and have value to say, okay, you know, let's try this. I don't hesitate, but if it's something that I need to learn, I'm uncertain with, I will certainly listen to directions and try to learn. So I guess, again, it depends on my level of knowledge with the situation at hand.
Mhm. Okay. Do you tend to be excessive in the things you do?
No, I wouldn't say that I'm an excessive person. I mean, I can let go, and if it doesn't get done, okay, well, I'll finish it tomorrow, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a completion or something needs to get done, I will probably be obsessive to try to get something done on time, but yet I can also let go if need be.
Okay. And what about impulsive? Do you tend to be impulsive?
No, not really.
Okay. Okay.
And it was some anger or frustration. Again, that's taking steps back to other questions you'd asked, that again, that impulsivity can get you into trouble if you're not careful. And that's, again, taking a step back or taking a breather before reacting. So I don't feel that I'm an impulsive individual, no.
Okay. How easy or hard is it for you to be vulnerable?
I don't really consider myself, I don't put myself in a position, I think, to be vulnerable. I like to have control and some knowledge into whatever it is I might be getting myself into, so I don't put myself in a vulnerable position.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm supportive of those who are vulnerable, you know, especially my oldest child, you know, just seeing the vulnerability and the outcome that can happen, to just basically try to redirect and give that individual the tools to basically be less vulnerable and knowing when to step away from something that might be harmful. And I don't feel I'm walking into too many things that I feel I'm really vulnerable. And like working with computers and tech kind of things, because I really am not very tech savvy.
Me neither. How important would you say having privacy is to you, or time alone?
You know, again, I would say that's, now that I've experienced more, I really kind of savor that. When I was raising the 3 kids and my husband traveling all the time alone just really didn't exist. And I look back to that and going, how did I do this? But you do what is given to you to the best of your ability at that time. Now that I've experienced some downtime or free time, I certainly find the value. And if it's just reading a book, playing solitaire on the computer, going out for my jogs and exercise or yoga or whatever, I kind of savor some of that quiet time.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like it's for a lot of your life, you didn't really have the luxury of a lot of private time.
No.
And it sounds like, was that okay for you? I mean, it sounds like you spoke through that.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have changed it, no.
Okay. Do you tend to be more of an observer or participant in social situations?
In social situations, I would say I like to participate and be a part of these social situations. Being an observer to a certain degree, but then to participate, you feel, I think it's more fulfilling. Mm-hmm. And certainly standing back and watching, you can also learn quite a bit from that too. And as long as you're taking that time when you're observing to learn from it, that's okay. But to be a participant is just, for me, I think, something that is a better fit for me.
Okay. You mentioned you were more of an optimist than a pessimist before. Do Do you tend to look at what's positive more than what's negative in different situations?
For the most part. Now, there are a few people in my life that I can't help but go,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
you know, again, that whole trust and that sort of thing. Lack of trust is certainly not positive, so that would be a negative.
Right.
But generally speaking, the people I associate with, I'm definitely more positive, and you feel better.
Mhm.
To have a negative outlook on so many things can be extremely draining.
Would you say that this is something you might do, is like automatically reframe something into a more positive terms? Like some people, like if someone says, I'm not doing very well, and you kind of tell them to look on the bright side, or is that a trait that you have, that you're good at
Yeah,
reframing
yeah,
things
and
and putting a positive spin?
right. And I would say, and again, I'm kind of my own life and going through with my friends and certain family members, to try to be more positive. There are certain things that, yeah, they'd probably go, oh, you're kind of negative. And I know a few people that would say you're kind of negative. Well, they don't fully grasp why. But generally speaking, that the positive side is just, it's just a better way. It's a better place to be.
Mm-hmm. 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 How are you if someone puts constraints on you? Like if you're doing a project or working on something and someone says you need to work within these limitations, is that okay, or does that feel overly confining?
Well, and for me, again, being a stay-at-home mom and taking care of the house, I don't have a whole lot of situations like that.
Right.
Um, but I would say, again, being able to take direction and not being always in charge,
Right.
those are some guidelines that were set up. I would say I would try to, work within the guidelines that individual or individuals are setting.
Right.
And whether I agree may not be pertinent.
Mm-hmm. Do you prefer having a lot of options when you need to decide something, or would you rather have fewer options?
Oh, I would say certainly you have fewer options. It's easier to figure out because their choices aren't there. I mean, it's. I guess you can go into a restaurant and you have a menu that's 4 pages long. Okay, oh my gosh! And I walk into another restaurant that has 10 choices on each page. I tend to like that.
Right.
Options, yeah.
Yeah.
It's easier to make your decision when there aren't all those dangling things out there.
Right. Yeah. I'm the same way,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Yes.
How, you've kind of answered this already with some other questions, but just to ask it more directly, how okay are you with looking at the painful side of life or being in touch with the pain of life? It sounds like that's been okay for you. You've been able to do that when it's
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah. And sometimes I come back to that because it's a reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can draw myself in and, get emotional, and I'm still learning from that. I mean, I look at my mother or my father who passed away in 2001. And I won't get into the specifics, but it was not a great situation. And I find myself still talking to him. I drive by his old house and I get all emotional. And then all of a sudden I'm going, okay, I'm fine. I allow that to happen. I allow some of those feelings to come back, but I need to be able to handle them. And you can't let those feelings control you. You need to be able to let go when you need to let go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really
That doesn't say you can't revisit. And
Yeah.
I revisit a lot of these things in my past and thinking about sometimes of the future. But and again, just that's life, I guess. Yeah, I can't push it all away and act as though it never happened.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm at the finish of my round of questions.
Okay.
So now what I'd like to do is I want to, in the last 10 minutes or so, what I'd like to do is tell you what I'm hearing in what you've said and sort of a hypothesis about a type or maybe two types that I think you might be and why.
Okay.
So I'll kind of draw on evidence from what you've said to kind of say, this is a guess. Ultimately, you're the one who decides what type you are. So this isn't about me telling you who you are because you're the expert on you.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll almost like collaborate with you a little bit in this last part where I'll tell you what I'm hearing and then I'll ask you a few more questions, but it'll be more from the point of view of here's what I think you might be, what do you think? But before I do that, I wanted to give you a really brief orientation to the Enneagram so you kind of know what I'm talking about when I share the type that I think you might be or one or two types. So the Enneagram is, it's a typology of 9 interconnected types. And it's the Enneagram diagram. Have you seen it? It's a...
You know, I saw it briefly. Phil had asked me about had I gone through, and I had not, though I opened it up very briefly before coming into this session and saw the diagram. I think Phil had opened it up too and showed me. So I just saw very briefly, but I really didn't study it. I didn't look into it.
Okay, it's basically a 9-pointed star inscribed in a circle.
Okay.
And there are these 9 points around the circle basically, but there are also some lines in between them. And that's important because one of the nice things about the Enneagram is humans are complex, right? Our personalities are complex. We're not simple. But the Enneagram kind of captures that because what it says is you have one main type, but then your type is connected to 4 other types, 2 that are on either side of you around the circle, and 1 that the inner lines of this star are, each point is connected to 2 other points. So I mention that only because that's going to help me sort of explain what my hypothesis is, because even though we usually identify pretty strongly with one type, and the theory behind the Enneagram is we really do have one core personality type, and that's what we study when we use the Enneagram as a guide for self-knowledge. It's nice to know what the other types are because it helps you orient yourself a little bit more. Because again, I'm hearing, I have a pretty strong hypothesis about what type you are, but there's 2 other types that I'm hearing flavorings of, and it's almost like they help me confirm my hypothesis because they're connected to your points. Does that make sense? Okay.
That makes sense. Really quickly, the Enneagram, how long has that been around?
Oh, great question.
Briggs and that.
So most of us that have been studying it for a long time think it's been around for maybe thousands of years.
Okay.
It's connected to ancient wisdom and philosophy, some that came through the ancient Greeks. It's actually connected to some of the core or perennial philosophies that are at the root of all the world's religious traditions.
Okay.
So it's kind of an idea, very briefly, it's the idea that we are all endowed with, almost unlimited capacities and potential, but we tend to identify with a personality style in order to get along in life, to sort of survive childhood. It's almost like the personality is sort of like your interface for the world.
Sure.
And it's both something that really helps you get along in life because it sort of is the structure of what you become good at, and what helps you. Yeah.
Do you feel that with the Enneagram, are you born into that, or is this more a cultural thing that when you are raised, or is this kind of predisposed genetically that you may have some of these sort of things?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So this is my theory and what I think some people who also opinion I trust believe, but it's just a theory. I can't really prove it. But the theory is that you're born as a particular type, like you bring that in with you. It's almost like you're not a blank slate when you come into the world.
Right.
You come in with your personality, but then you can also look back at your history and say, I can see how I also was shaped by my environment, but it's sort of a dance between who you are and how you cope with things and how you experience the world and how the world experiences you, But
Yeah.
So it's sort of nature and nurture is what we think
Sure.
today, but there is a strong nature component. In other words, you came into this world as you, and you had certain sensitivities, certain strengths, and as you meet the world, those sort of almost get more crystallized through, living your life. And a lot of what I heard you talk about too in your life is, as we live our lives, we also learn the lessons we need to learn. So
Right.
although the Enneagram is a great self-development tool, what you'll probably find, and I heard it in some of your answers, is you've already been learning some of those lessons just by being a person who's aware and
Sure.
trying to live a good life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's kind of, and chakras and yoga, and understanding some of those. And yeah, it's just, there's a lot of things in life that play roles. Yeah.
Exactly. So what I'll do now is I'll give you a little orientation to the 9 types and then I'll land on the one that I think that is most likely your type. But again,
Mhm.
you will need to confirm it after our discussion.
Sure.
So the Enneagram is based on the idea that we have 3 centers of intelligence, head, heart, and body. In the West, we kind of think of our head as the center of intelligence. So a lot of us think that we're head types. But according to this theory, there are 3 types that kind of overuse the head center, that really like analyze and evaluate things. 3 types that overuse the heart center, that sort of lead more from emotion, and 3 types that are based more in the body center. Now, at this level, it's sort of hard to tell what type you are, because in our culture, we all think of ourselves as pretty head-based. So we don't have to think about that right now. But the main thing is, there are 3 types that are kind of overuse that center. So we're sort of out of balance. And one of the things the Enneagram helps us do is get more in balance and using all 3 centers equally. Now, there are the 3 types in the head are what we call fear-based types, and that their character is shaped by their relationship to the core emotion of fear. There's sort of 3 core emotions of the human ego, or fear, anger, and sadness. Right? So the heart types are more shaped by their relationship to sadness. Now, it doesn't mean that these types go around feeling these feelings all the time. It's just that they're sort of a core factor in
Right.
the operation of the personality. So the body-based types are connected to the core emotion of anger. And I think that you may be a body-based type, and that those 3 types are 8, 9, and 1. You said that you're pretty aware that you relate a lot to being angry, and sometimes you are aware of having to kind of hold that back.
Mhm.
So my hypothesis for your type is that you might be a type 1. Now, the type 1 is sometimes, now this is why I don't use in the books that I write about the Enneagram, I don't use the names or the labels for the types, because I think they can be just as misleading as they are helpful. The name for the 1, which you won't relate to, but bear with me, it's sometimes called the perfectionist or the reformer. And this is because they tend to view the world, and the Enneagram, more than anything else, is it sort of determines our focus of attention, what we pay attention to and what we tend not to pay attention to. So both really focal points of sort of the way we see the world, or what structures our worldview, but also blind spots and things that we don't attend to fully. Now, 1s are people who want to do the right thing, who are very attuned to what the right thing is to do, that see the world in some ways in terms of what an ideal outcome would be, and how things don't always match up to that ideal. They tend to be people who are more opinionated, who pretty much, like, again, partly because they're seeing things in terms of like, what's the right thing here? They tend to be very responsible. They tend to have high integrity. And they tend to be very attuned in, and I heard this in some of what you said, to what's appropriate in a certain situation. What's the kind of thing you should do to, say, be a good person? They're one of the types that respects authority more and that tends to follow the rules. Many other types would say some version of they don't really follow the rules, or they sometimes do, or they break the rules. 1s are one of the types that pretty much like to respect authority, like to follow the rules, because it gives life a sense of order in a way.
It does.
It gives you sort of a sense of, sort of in some ways, like knowing what the right thing is, knowing what the moral thing is, knowing the ways that we should conduct ourselves so that things go better and we get along well. And I heard in a lot of what you said that there was this sense of wanting to do things that, say, have a positive impact on people or don't hurt people. And at the same time, I did hear that you also have this relationship to anger, that you're aware that that is an emotion that you tend to feel. And 8s, 9s, and 1s have a key relationship to anger. 8s tend to overexpress anger. 9s tend to go to sleep to anger, but even though they're asleep to it, it fundamentally shapes their character. 1s tend to kind of be in the middle. They feel anger, but they're also very aware of the need to control it. So they both feel it and sometimes express it, and sometimes try to kind of put a lid on it. And again, putting a lid on it, and I heard this in some of what you said, is really an awareness to what's the situation, what's appropriate. Sometimes it's hard to hold it back. And so I heard that in some of the things you said. Now, another piece to know about the Enneagram system, and I'm trying not to make it too complex since it's your first introduction, but there are also 3 versions of each of the 9 types. And so there are 3 kinds of 1s. And I need to tell you that because in order to really help this fit for you, it might help you to know about these 3 kinds of 1s, because even though there's a lot of characteristics they share, which is most of the characteristics I've mentioned so far, I think that there's one of the 3 that you probably won't relate to. And if you say pick up a book about the Enneagram and that book happens to emphasize this version, this one of 3, you might not relate to it so much because it's the one that tends to be the most perfectionistic. And so these 3 versions are based on which of one of 3 instincts is the strongest in us. And the Enneagram has this instinct component to it, which it's kind of like saying, well, we've got these human personalities, but there's a part of us that we're also animals. So the instinct part is sort of the animal level of us. And the idea behind the Enneagram is that there are 3 basic instincts that we all have. But again, one of us, we tend to favor more than the other 2, just like we have those 3 centers and we tend to live more from one than the other. So the 3 instincts are for self-preservation, for a social instinct, which is about kind of getting along with the group or the collective, and a one-to-one instinct, which is very much about like bonding with specific others, creating strong relationships with other individuals. And you can see how all 3 of these things can serve our survival. So the one I think that you're not, and I want to highlight this again, because if you pick up a book about the Enneagram and it emphasizes this one, you probably won't relate to it as much. It's the perfectionist, which is the self-preservation one, which tries to get every little detail perfect. You know, and that doesn't sound like you relate to that from what you said. You said, no, my house might be messy. And most ones say that, all 3 ones say they're in certain areas of life. There may be a way they like to have more order, whereas other areas, not so much. You know, like my car might be a mess, but my desk is straight, you know, or my house is messy, but I think very, you know, like my father is actually one, and he's a mathematician. His mind is very orderly, but his office is a mess. You know, he's not a perfectionist in terms of needing everything to be perfect. Now that one also, the self-preservation one, is also the one that feels the most anxiety. They're also the one that feels the most self-critical. Now, some ones are more self-critical than they are critical of others, and some ones are more critical of others than they are of themselves. And in what I heard you were saying is, while when you were younger, you used to be more self-critical, you've kind of let that go more. And so I'm thinking you may be more on the side of the one-to-one one or the social one, which might be more on the side of not being so self-critical, although it sounds like you are to a degree, especially like you said, after the fact. And the one-to-one one, I think might be the likeliest because they're the ones that have the hardest time reining in their anger. The self-preservation one actually represses it the most. And so might even say they don't get angry very often, although underneath their anger, and it tends to leak out as irritation or annoyance, or more tamped down frustration, more tamped down versions of anger. The one-to-one one is actually the one that feels a little bit more okay. Like, it's okay to be angry sometimes. Sometimes it's actually appropriate. Sometimes it's actually good because it is connected to what you value, or what you think is important, or something that you may want to do, that you want to take a stand on, for instance.
Right, you're fighting for.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that I like about the Enneagram is it doesn't make value judgments about different emotions or ways of being. It kind of says about everything, like there's kind of a good side and a bad side. And some people of other types might think it's not good to get angry, but it's actually, there's no value judgment that this puts on it. It's like sometimes it's appropriate to get angry. Sometimes it's good. And it's definitely good to be in touch with emotions. So in this way, I think what you were describing is very healthy. Like you're aware of your anger. Sometimes you can express it. Sometimes you choose not to. And it's been something you've worked on. And so again, would be a way, an area that ones would need to work on when they use the Enneagram as a tool.
Sure.
Of like especially being more aware. It's a lot about self-awareness, like being more aware. What am I angry about? Is it okay to express it here? Or should I hold it back? Are there costs to me of holding it back versus expressing it? All these things would be things that the Enneagram would help ones get more in touch with. So any questions at this point? Because I realize I've given you a lot of information. Is this sound?
Yeah, you explained the questions I had, I asked earlier, and you did a great job explaining that. But no, I mean, I find it interesting.
Yeah. So let me say a few more things, and then we can stop. I want to say a little bit more about the social one and the one-to-one one, because I think usually people there's one they don't relate to as much, and then there are two that they may have aspects of. So the social one is a one that really wants to do the right thing. Now, again, I think you might be more the one-to-one, because the social one also wants to be right. And it seems like sometimes you like to be right, but it's not like a need to,
Right.
for you, it seems like you're more about doing the right thing in the world, which might be more the one-to-one one. And but the social one, you may have an element of this. Social ones also, they almost take on the role, sometimes unconsciously, of being a good role model, of doing of what the right thing is to do. And they may either get involved in sort of being a teacher and teaching people the right way to be, or they may just be someone who wants to serve as a good model of the way to be. And you could have some of that as well too, because it depends on how active you get in sort of wanting to fix things in the world, or wanting to educate people about what the right thing is to do. But one thing that I think is really clear from what you said is you tend to be very active in the world and doing good things, which ones tend to do. Like it sounds like you volunteer, you're of service, and that's something that you think about and is important to you. And ones are definitely that way. They tend to be very responsible, very ethical, very reliable, and all types have strengths and challenges. I would say this on the strength side, like wanting to be a good person, wanting to do the right thing, wanting to be a force for good in society, all of these things. And I heard a lot of this in what you said. Now, a couple of other of these connecting points I want to highlight that I also heard in what you said, which you could also kind of check out to see if they make sense. Now, the wing points are just simply the types on either side of you along the circle. So for you, you're connected to 9 and 2 along the circle. They're just simply the types on either side of you. Now, I heard a lot of 2 in you, and that's my type actually. 2s want to be liked. They tend to be a little more emotional. Now, I think you're more emotional than some ones would be, but I think that has to do with maybe being the one having a lot of one-to-one in you. If you are that one, it also may be that we tend to have some characteristics of the types on either side of us. Sometimes it just happens that we have flavor. It's like a flavoring with one more than the other. And I hear a lot of 2 in you, that you express a lot of ability to tap into emotion, to feel sadness. Now, 2s would be, I would say, more emotional more of the time than you are. Like in everyday life, they tend to be more up and down and be more emotional. It sounds like you can access your emotions, but it's more like when the moment calls for it. You know, like if there's something sad that happens in your life, if you lose someone, then of course that feeling comes to you. And even with the example you gave of someone you lost a long time ago, that you can still allow yourself to feel that. So it's almost like twos are very heart-based, and I can feel that you have a connection to your heart. And,
Oh, yeah.
and some ones are more controlling of their emotions than it sounds like you are. You have more access to your feelings. You are wanting to be of service and helpful in the world, and twos tend to want to help people. Usually though, twos have an ulterior motive that they're not always conscious of, which is they help because they want people to like them. They're very tuned into approval. They also shapeshift a little more than it sounds like you do.
Sure.
Twos they'll present themselves differently with different people because they want to make that connection, and relationships and connection are a little bit more focal points than, say, doing the right thing. So that's why I think why I hear some two, but I would land on one as my best guess for you. Now, the other type I want to highlight that you may find interesting to learn about is the type 7. So one, if you follow the internal arrow lines, if you get a chance to look at an Enneagram diagram after we talk, it's connected to 4 and 7. Now 7, I hear a lot of 7 in what you're talking. You tend to be upbeat, you tend to be positive. 7s are probably the most positive, upbeat. They like to think of fun things to do. You know, when you talk about how you are socially, it sounds like you like to participate, you like to be involved with people, you like to have fun. Humor is something that you have ready access to. All of these things are very 7-ish. And it sounds like you already have a healthy connection. And that's one of the growth paths for each type, is to get more in touch with those arrow line points. They're almost like natural balancing points. So it sounds like you've already just naturally in your life gotten in touch with a lot of 7. And so that's a good thing, but you could also learn more about 7 and do even more of that as a way of, it's like each of these types is like an antidote in some ways. So ones can sometimes be serious because they want to do the right thing so much. And so sometimes that's a serious matter, whereas 7s tend to be lighter and they prioritize pleasure. Sometimes it's hard for ones to relax because doing the right thing a lot sometimes means not putting work before play, let's say. Whereas 7s put play before work often, not all the time, but much of the time. So that's one thing you might want to investigate. And the other thing might be that arrow line to 4. And again, these are growth paths. I've spent some time learning a little bit more about 1, some sort of growth aspects for 1 is again, becoming more aware of anger and how you channel it. It's the main thing of how you channel it. And it already seems like in your life, you've been learning these lessons, which we often do just naturally. 1s, it's good for 1s to get into their body. It sounds, from some of the comments you made, it sounds like you've been involved in athletics and exercise. That's very good for 1s. It's great for 1s to get in touch with nature. Because it helps that's part of what helps them relax. There's something about the natural flow and rhythm of nature that helps 1s relax more, and relaxing more, having more fun, being light, being humorous. These are all very good things for 1s because it offsets a tendency that they sometimes have to be a little bit more on the serious side.
Sure, sure.
And then, so that movement to 4, I'll just end with that. It's like the 4 is one of the most emotional types. And so it would almost help you sink even a little more into your emotions, and especially sadness, disappointment, loss, any of those feelings. 4s are really, healthy 4s are really good at accepting all emotions. And so like being in your heart, accepting all of your emotions, not maybe needing to control them as much if that's not what's good for you, that kind of thing. Also doing what has meaning and purpose for you. 4s are very good at sort of what's important to me and expressing that in the world instead of, so it sort of helps 1s get away from what should I do or must I do versus what do I want to do? you know, what speaks to my heart in terms of how do I want to spend my time? And again, it sounds like you've been doing more of that in recent years anyway. So I think one of the things, if you're interested in learning more about the Enneagram and checking out and confirming if my hypothesis is correct, one of the things you'll probably see is that you've already, in a really natural way, been moving in some positive directions for yourself. But the Enneagram might give you even more insight in how to do that even more.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'll have to definitely look into it further. I find that to be intriguing.
Good. Yeah, well, if nothing else, I hope I made you interested enough to explore further.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Beatrice. It was, I just found it to, your questions were typically questions I'm not asked.
Mhm.
It really does bring out the thought process to really think it through. And I just find that to be very interesting. And it was interesting listening to you put things together, and now I have a little bit more time to look into it further. I'm going to go, she was spot on.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, it's been really nice talking to you. Thank you for being so present and open with this process. And
My pleasure.
Allowing other people to learn about how we can all gain access to this system that I think can really help people learn a lot about themselves.
Yeah, and I thank you too, Beatrice. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you,
All right,
Carrie.
take care.
You too.
Bye now.
Bye.